How's it going, everybody? And welcome back. And if you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. Coming off of my conversation last night with InfoSec Pat, one of the things, the main topic of discussion was mastering networking labs. And I want to talk a little bit about that because that seems to be a topic of discussion, a contention point for some folks. I remember go back 15 years ago or so when I first started getting into networking. I didn't know what I was doing either. Like, I didn't know how to log in to do anything or configure stuff, let alone, what a CCIE was. So what I realized when I got done talking to him and we went away from the live, right? We stopped being live. It was just me and him talking again. It became evident. He's just like, you should put some stuff together that's like from scratch, like nothing. And so this is what you guys need to start off on. So the URL you need to go into is netacad.com/courses/packet tracer, or you could just Google Cisco Packet Tracer download. When you do that, that will give you, to redirect you to this website. It's the first link. If you come back over here, this is the first link that I clicked on, right? It redirects you over here. So once you're here, then you have some decisions to make. So we're going to go, it's going to redirect us to skillsforall.com. So we're going to click on this, and it redirects, and it brings us to here. And we're going to get started. Okay, so first thing we have to do is we're going to have to, I don't have an account, but I'm going to pause real quick because I'm going to use a Google account, so I'll get past this point. So just get set up. Okay, so I clicked continue with Google, and everything seems to work out. I'm going to go ahead and say I've read the terms and conditions, and I would like to receive. Yep, that's fine. I'm going to say accept and continue, and it should bring me in. Now, my learning, when I go here to browse catalog, we have explore, and there's some options in here. You definitely want to get started. We're going to go to Cisco Packet Tracer, and we're going to go ahead and enroll to download. So we're going to go get started. Now, I don't need to go through this, so it's, I don't remember, is it resources? Yeah, so they give you some resources to get started with. So we'll just pretend like, oh, okay, is this download? Now I'm going through this blind. I have not done any of this yet. So first time in the course, download Cisco Packet Tracer. So we're gonna click on this guy. So let's see here. What's the next step? Okay, so then you have what version of Packet Tracer do you want to download? So we're going to go ahead, and they have some modules and whatnot for cybersecurity essentials. They have VirtualBox, Kali Linux. So they got some options here. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to pause real quick, but I'm going to just click on this one right here to download it. All right, so I was able to pull up the download, and this is the license agreement. I'm going to accept. I'm going to install Packet Tracer there. I'm going to click next. Cisco Packet Tracer. I'll create a desktop shortcut, next, and then install. This will take a couple of minutes to do, and then once I have that done, I will be able to launch the app. I'm actually moving stuff around in my on my desktop in order for that to do its thing. So again, no hardware needed, right? It's just one of those things where you download it, you run it. You're going to have to go through. The last time I did this was probably 4 years ago, and I had to log in using the email address that I gave for just to sign up. So we're just going to, I have a pretty beefy machine, so this is installing pretty quickly. but there's a lot going on here. But I'll pause for just a moment. Alright, so we're done now. We're going to click on Finish, and then it's going to launch Packet Tracer. Would you like to run multi-user when the application starts? No, it's okay. Just me. No one special. Alright, so it's going to go ahead and prompt me. Okay, so you get this guy right here, where I can't bring over the main thing over at the moment because it needs me to log in. So I'll sign in using one of the following methods. So I need to go. I'm gonna click on Skills for All, and keep me logged in for 90 days. Perfect. And I'm gonna pause real quick. Okay, by clicking on that button, it automatically says you've successfully logged into Cisco Packet Tracer. You may close this tab. So I'm going to close that tab, and I'm going to minimize this window and minimize that window. I'm going to drag this over. This is Packet Tracer, right? And if you're just getting started with it, there's nothing spectacular out of the gate. So there's a lot to do. You can do a lot with Packet Tracer. I worked with it quite a bit, but at the end of the day, you got a handful of routers. You got some end devices down here, and there's really no way for me to zoom in on any of this stuff for you guys to see, so I'll just go ahead and get out of the way. So you got your PC, you've got your components, MCU card, SBC card, what was that called, a thing? Thing IoT, yeah, that was just kind of, okay, yes. You have your connections, you have your serial, automatically choose the connection type, you have your console cable, straight through, copper crossover, fiber, phone, coax, serial DCE, DTE, data clocking equipment, data termination equipment. The C means clocking. It sets the bit rate. So we have that. So if we come over here to the networking devices, then we have our switches. We have a handful of devices. We have some 3650 in here. Then we have a hub. We have a couple of access points. They have a Meraki box in here, 3504 controller, 2504 controller, 3702 access point, firewalls. They've got a 5506 firewall, or the ASA firewall. So you have some equipment in here you can work with. So what a lot of times is going to end up happening is you're going to want to put together something in order for this to work. So let's go ahead and click on the routers, and I'm going to grab the 4331. Now, when you click on this guy, you click on it, and then you get this little pop-up window here. Now, what's going to end up happening is you can click on Zoom In, and I'm going to drag this over to the side. This is a infographic, if you will, of the back of the router. So this is the back, and you get a little power switch here. And if you want to turn the box off, you flip the power switch by clicking on the O. And then you can't take the power out of it. You can't go that far. But at least the box is turned off. So if you wanted to add something to this, you could. So we have the GLCT, which I think this is Ethernet. Yeah, we have to put a module in. Here's the module. Here is this should be our ES2. This is our switch. So you can add a 4-port switch. You have your fiber modules. Is this what I think is that fiber? No, that's NIM2 serial. It's a serial connection. So I'm actually going to want to take this out. So go to the yellow and it removes it. So if you come in here and you look at GLCE, that's 100 megabit fiber. This is a fiber module as well. You can plug those in. And so this is SFP. T is 100. That does auto gig too as well. SFP. Cisco Industrial Ethernet and Smart Grid switches and routers. So it's like I said, it's been a little while since I've done this, so I don't remember what actually supported. So I don't think you can plug this in any of these spots. Well, you can't. Module's not compatible. Okay. Yeah. See, there needs to be here's your network interface module. Here's your cover. So if you didn't want to do anything, you just put a cover on it. Same thing with this guy. or not. So you have that. Now if you go to the config, the device must be powered on. Then you go back over here and you power it on. And then you go to the CLI and you can watch the guy boot up. So it's running 16.6 code right here. You can see that right here. And then it's once it finishes booting up. So again, this is simulated completely. Is it going to work? For the most part, yeah. But this is the exact same look you're going to get on an actual router. So if I was to come in here and hit the enter key, it's going to ask me, would you like to enter the initial configuration dialog? Now normally, I'm going to tell you no, because I don't need to go through the ICD in order for me to get a router working. I know what to configure. But let's say you don't. Like, what is the ICD? I'm going to walk you through it. So I'm going to go full screen. And I can't zoom in or else I would. But if you're right here, it says, would you like to enter the ICD? We're going to type in yes. Now, what's cool is at any point in time that you want to enter this, or you want to exit, let's say you type in yes by accident, and you want to exit out, you just type in Control-C, and it'll automatically break you out. So we're going to say, would you like to enter basic management? Sure. So it's like, would you like to, what is the host name? We're going to type in here R1, or actually, the name of the router here is router 0 in the upper left-hand corner, so we're typing router 0, hit the enter key. The enable secret is a password used to protect access to privileged exec and configuration modes. This password, after entered, becomes encrypted in the configuration. And enter the enable secret. I'm going to type in here Cisco 123. And it said, and now it's the enable password. So the enable password is used when you do not specify an enable secret with some older software versions and some boot images. We're going to type in Cisco 123, and it says please choose a different password. You can't use the same password for both. So I'm just going to type in Cisco 1234. It says with the virtual terminal password, so this is going to be if you're going to remotely manage it through Telnet, SSH, things like that, is used to protect the router over a network interface. What do you want the password to be? I'll type in just Cisco. Configure SNMP network management. SNMP, or Simple Network Management Protocol, is how things like SolarWinds or PRTG are going to, Netmon, these are going to be network management tools that are going to manage the device. I'm going to type in no. Now, you see how it says no in the brackets? That's the default response. So if you just hit the enter key, it's not going to configure SNMP for you. Now it says, enter interface name used to connect to the management network from the above interface summary. What does that mean? That means that you're going to have a dedicated interface on the router that is going to be used to connect to the router for management purposes only. So out of all these interfaces, you could choose whatever you'd like. So for just the sake of argument, I'm going to grab gig 01/3, and I'm going to paste that in. Oh, it did not like that. So we'll go ahead and grab, we're going to go copy, because I forgot Packet Tracer is a little finicky in that regard. We're going to go paste and hit the enter key. It says, okay, now that you've defined an interface, and for clarity's sake, Packet Tracer makes you do this, real iOS will not. It'll actually let you highlight the entire line and then just right click, assuming you're not using some sort of copy paste limitation or effect inside of like PuTTY or secure CRT. Now configuring interface on gig 0/1, configure IP on this interface, we'll say sure. As an IP address for this interface, I'll just type in 192.168.1.10. What is the subnet mask for this? /24? That works. Now it asks, so it's configured that IP address on this device, right? So this is the initial configuration that it's going to set for the box. So this is the configuration command script that was created. Router 0, my Cisco 123 went through a one-way MD5 hash That is the output of the MD5 hash. You can see 1234 for the enable password, line VTY, password is Cisco. Then we come down here to gig 0/13, we see 192.168.10/24. Go to the iOS command prompt without saving this config, 0. Return back to the setup without saving the config, or 2, save the config to NVRAM and exit. I just walked you through what the process looks like. Now I'm going to go ahead and type in 0, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter key. None of the changes took effect because I didn't apply them. So to do this normally, I would go to enable, which is going to bring me to, if I do it, show privilege. It's going to show me privilege levels 15, which is enable mode 15. There's actually 15 level, technically 16 if you consider it. So 0 through 15. So I want to change the host name to be router 1. So in order to get to configure a device, you need to type in config T or configure terminal. And then you type in host name is going to be R1. Now the host name changes. This is a very simple process. Now, all the individual pieces to this are going to be configuration via the CLI, the command line interface. That's what this is. The CLI is the command line interface. Now, there is a config way to do this through the global settings. If you're not used to it yet and you don't know what to do, this will basically walk you through what to do. So if I want to change the display name to be something else, I can just type in here R1, and then it changes the router's name on the display to be R1, right? Now if I click back on the router and I go back to global config and I say I want to change the host name to be R12, okay? I click off of that and it changes the host name to be R12. If I want it to be Cisco is cool R1, it does the exact same thing. Now there is a limitation to how many characters your host name can be, but it's going to be up to you to make that determination. Now the NVRAM startup config and running config, you're not going to have access to this particular dialog box or global settings when you're on a real router. This won't exist. So if you're just getting started and you don't really know what the heck you're doing, this is a great place to start. So I'm just going to come back over here and just type in R1, click in here, it's going to apply. The NVRAM, the non-volatile RAM, that's essentially your hard drive. That's going to save all of your settings. So anytime you want to make a change, if we look at we have the startup config, we can load it, we can export it, we can go export or merge. Some of this stuff is kind of self-explanatory. So do you want to load the startup config? You could have wiped the box, you could be loading the config, those type of things. If you wanted to take it a step further, you could come in here and look at the settings, algorithm settings. There's CBAC, half open message multiplier, stuff like that. These are just, I wouldn't really worry about this too much. If you want to do static routes, you can configure a static route. If you wanted to do routing information protocol or RIP, you could do RIP if you would like. That's another option as well. The VLAN database, how do you create VLANs? Well, on a router you really wouldn't, but if you want to do .1Q subinterfaces to do inter-VLAN routing, that's an option as well. If you wanted to configure the individual interfaces, this is how you would do that. You'd have to turn the interface on, set the speed, set the duplex. You can identify the MAC address. You can set the IP address configuration, the IP and the subnet mask, so on and so forth. So if you don't know what to configure or where to configure it, this is a good place to start. Or you can just be like me and all the things that we just did, notice how they're all there, right? So you have your router RIP, you have your VLAN database, you have your interface gig 000. So anything we clicked over here on the config tab had an associated CLI command. So basically they're trying to make it easy for you to get started when you're going about with this. Now I'm going to go ahead and close this out. So there's nothing really spectacular going on. But one device is kind of, it's whatever. So let's talk a little bit about connectivity. So I'm going to click on the device again. I'm going to go to physical. I'm going to turn this box off. When you power a device off, but you haven't yet saved the config, when you boot the device back up, the config is wiped. So it's not persistent. In order to make it persistent, you need to save the config. And I'll show you guys how to do that here in just a minute. So what would a basic network diagram look like? So let's go ahead and zoom in here a little bit so that it's easier for you guys to see. I'm going to grab a 1941, just so it's a different type of device. I'm going to click on this guy here. I'm going to go to the config. Device is still booting. We do have modules that we can leverage. A couple of gig interfaces. So I'm actually going to power this guy off. And then I'm going to add in, actually this is a bad example. If you want to get rid of a device, click up here. Yep. And then you can delete anything you want with that. I'm going to add another 4331 just for the ease of messing around with it. Okay, so then what I'm going to go do is I'm going to click on this guy, and we have the same setup, right? We have the 3 interfaces and whatnot. So that's going to be fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the connections, and whenever you have like devices, router to router, switch to switch, PC to PC, or you're going NIC to NIC, you need to make sure that you are leveraging crossover cables. And if you don't understand what that means, it just means that the send pins and the receive pins are the same on devices. In order for it to work correctly, you need to flip-flop them so that whatever the send is on one side is going to be the receive on the other, and vice versa. So if I click over here on the copper crossover and I click here, it's going to give me an option of what interfaces I want to use. I'm going to go gig 00 to gig 00, just like that. Now the down arrow that's red means the interface is simply turned off. So the next thing I'm going to go do, I don't know if I can highlight and, no, it doesn't let me do that. So I've got 2 routers now, but can you do anything with 2 routers? If you want to focus anything on just routing, sure, you can. But that's not fun. Let's go back over here to our end devices. I'm going to grab a switch, and on one side here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take this 2960, it's a flat layer 2 switch. And I'm going to go back to my, actually, let's do, they have a 3650 in here. Let's throw this guy over here on this side. So you might notice the difference in the icon type. So 2960 means, and when you see the icons where the arrows are going like this, that simply means that what? It's just a flat layer 2 switch. It does VLANs, it does trunking, it does some spanning tree, a little bit of port channels, that type of stuff. But the 3650 is a multi-layer switch, which means you can do both layer 3 or layer 2 switching and layer 3 routing. So if we take a look at how that comes into play, we can see the circle with the arrows going away, which means it can do routing as well. So I'm going to take this a step further. I'm going to grab another 2960. I'm going to grab him out. I'm going to plug him in like that. And I'm going to grab another 2960 and drag him and go over like this. Now, for those of you that are really looking to get into networking, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do another switch down here. You might go, that's a lot of switches. Well, if you want to get into spanning tree, understanding how that works, this is a perfect example of how that would come into play. I'm going to grab another 2960 over here. Actually, I'll put it right here. So we'll have 2 downstream switches. So now that I have that, I need to go back over to my connections, and I need to draw a straight through cable from here on gig 0/1 down to this guy. And typically speaking, if I'm on a gig interface on my router, I want to be a gig interface on my switch. So I'm going to choose gig 1 here. So that's fine because they're not like devices. You don't need a crossover cable. So dash line means crossover cables. Non-dash line means regular straight through. So then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to crossover here. I'm going to go fast 24 to fast 24. Just so that I know what it is. And you notice how these are orange circles? Well, that's because we're waiting for spanning tree to figure itself out. I'm going to do the exact same thing here again. This guy here, we're going to do 23 to 23. And then we're going to do 23 to 24. Just so that it all lines up. Now there is a way you can go view physical view? No, that's not it. View, I need to go logical view, what is it? The options, preferences. I want to do, where is it? Here. always show port labels in logical workspace. That's what I'm looking for. So this way here, all the interface names are showing up now. So if you're not sure what it is, there's that. That just makes it messy though. So I'm going to just turn that off. Options, preferences. I'm going to do this. I like it a little bit cleaner. Or show port labels when mousing over logical workspace. So I can just come over here and this will show me that it's, oops, 23. It'll tell me what's up and up. I think it should do this too here. No? Okay, that's fine. But the green arrow pointing up means that the interface is up. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again over here. I'm going to go gig 1 to, and this is an all gig switch, right? So I'm going to go gig 24. And then I'm going to go crossover cable here. I'm going to go, oops, that is not where I wanted that to go. Gig 1, yes, I know. I can't connect the switch to itself twice. And we're going to go gig 1 here. And I've got to come over here and okay, so this is where you got to be careful where you click. I'm going to just delete that link. Come back over here. I'm going to go to gig 1 to gig 1. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to do gig 2 to gig 2. So if I wanted to mess around with ether channels, this is how I would do that. And then I'm going to draw a link from here on 24 to 24, and just like that. Now I'm going to go to my end devices, and I'm going to pull out a server out, grab a couple servers, highlight those, drag them over here, and you can configure these as well. I'm going to grab some PCs, put the PCs up here. You don't have to do it exactly like this, but it makes sense if you do this. So, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to have a server sitting over here. So I'm going to go back to my connections, and then I got to grab my straight through cable. We'll go fast 1 to this guy on fast 0. Fast 2 here to this guy here. We're going to do the same thing there. Just repeat the process over and over again. Is it a little tedious and time consuming? It is, but this is really no different than what you would be doing in the real world. So I'm going to grab this guy here and doing that. Oop, missed that. Okay, so now that we have all of our physical stuff laid out, right? Are we ready to start networking? Not yet. No, we're not. Now you got to figure out your subnetting scheme. What are you going to do in order to get all of this to work? So let me move this up here a little bit so it's more centered. So what do I mean by my subnetting scheme? Well, your goal, should you choose to accept it, is to now network all of this. How do I network all this? Well, that is the part where you need to start digging into the networking side of it. I'm not going to do the work for you, but what I will tell you to do is I could probably put a list of things here, but it would take me a few minutes to think of what all you need to do in order to make all this work. Do like this side here, this side there, so on and so forth. But like this is going to give you a brief look at how you would configure everything. Now what's kind of cool here too is if you click on this blue line here and you click here, you have the RS-232. That's going to be the port you're going to plug your console cable into on your PC. Now nowadays a lot of your console cables are USB into the computer and then RJ45 into the back of the switch. I'm going to click on RS-232. I'm going to click here. I'm going to go to console. So if I click on PC 0 and I pull this up and I go to the desktop, I can go over here to the terminal. I can click on OK, and now I can configure the router directly from PC 0. So I can make it as close to real life as I can without actually doing anything. So hopefully that will give you guys some ideas. So there's that. And if I don't want to do that, I can simply click on this guy here, go to the CLI, and do the exact same thing. I personally like it here because, well, it gives me a dark mode, and I don't like looking at a white screen all day long. It gives me a headache. So you have that. So once those things are put into place, you're in a good spot. Now you got to figure out what your addressing scheme is going to look like for IPv4 and IPv6 in most cases nowadays in most networks is going to have some v6 deployed. Then you got to figure out, okay, which one of these switches is going to be your root bridge, your primary root bridge, which one's going to be your secondary root bridge. How many VLANs are you going to have? Well, I would recommend 3. One for this PC here, one for this set of PC servers here, and then another one over here for this server. You would configure those VLANs on all 3 switches here, and then the other VLAN on these 3 switches here in order for server 2 to have its gateway as this switch here, and then for the routing to work. Where would your gateway be over here? Your gateway would sit on this 4331 right here because you don't have a multi-layer switch. So you would be doing router on a stick on this side over here to get communication between PC 0 and server 1. But then you'd be able to do what they call layer 3 switching on this guy here. Server 2's default gateway would sit on this box, and then you would do some sort of routing between this 4331, this 4331, and then this layer 3 switch. So would this give you a good idea of how to do some basic networking? It would. Now what's cool is you can test locally, and you can click over here, you can go to your services, and you can turn on HTTP. HTTP is actually turned on. So you could, once you think you have all of your networking done, if you wanted to test the application, you could go to the PC, you could go to the command prompt, and you could attempt to ping the IP address of the server and see if it responds. If it does, great. Then you'd be able to close this out. You'd be able to open up a web browser, and then you'd be able to type in the IP address of the web server, http:// 172.31.1.20, for example. And you click on go. It's not going to work because there's nothing there, but you would at least know what to type in and where to go. So that just gives you an idea of what it is that you could do to get started in the networking. Now, that's the physical piece to it, just so you guys are getting started. So what if I wanted to configure use PC0 to configure switch 1? Now I think switch 1 is completely configured. Cool. You click on this guy, and then you move it over here to this guy, and then you go to the console. That's it. Very, very straightforward. Very simple. How far will this thing stretch? All the way over here. All day long. No problems. What if I don't want to configure it on the PC and I want to configure it on the switch? Cool. Click on the switch, go to the CLI tab, and you're off to the races. What if I want to get rid of the console cable? Just click on the X. It goes away. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you can do when it comes to Packet Tracer and doing some basic networking. Now, is this going to be sufficient enough for CCNA? Well, that really comes down to how far you're willing to go. Are you willing to go into the CCNA blueprint? And for the sake of argument, I'm going to go ahead and bring this tab over here, and I am going to go to certifications, and we're going to go down here to the associate level, and we have associate CCNA right there. We're going to click on CCNA. We're going to come down here to of course they make it overly complicated. Here we go, the exam topics. View exam topics. This is what you want to do. And this is going to redirect you to Cisco's Learning Network. So what you have to do now, I'm good, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and you have to learn all this stuff. Right? Learn IPv6, learn IPv4, then network access. You got to do all your layer 2 stuff and your wireless. Then you got to do IP connectivity. You got to do how does a router work, configure your IP addressing. It says configure and verify single area OSPF version 2. So they're having you do OSPF out of the gate. Okay? Services, NAT, DHCP, NTP, SNMP, so on and so forth. Most of these things can be done in Packet Tracer. Security fundamentals, port security, DHCP snooping, WPA2, AAA, what else is there? Stuff like that. Automation and programmability, I don't know what's available here, but you'd have to play around with it. But for the network access and the IP connectivity, Totally doable right here. Totally. Now I don't know if there's a way to change the background to be dark mode. I don't know. Now what's cool is you can save this as whatever you'd like. So if you want to save and go File, Save As, you can go ahead and plug in whatever you want to do. It'll save it as a PKT file. And if you want to, you can export it and do that type of stuff. But there's all kinds of really cool stuff you can do with this if you wanted to. If you wanted to give like text and put some text in here, you could do that. If you wanted to draw a circle, that's fine. If you want to draw a circle, some stuff around, or do a circle there, you know, you can do all kinds of cool stuff to try to make it easier to break down, easier to understand, and stuff like that. But these are the basics to what you're gonna need. You could also do a line if you want to, that's a line. Click on the line, and then we're gonna draw a line on the top here, and just pretend like, oh, we created an IPsec VPN tunnel between these two guys. Do you need to do that? No, you don't. But could you configure IPsec between the sites just to see if you know if you can configure a VPN tunnel? Sure, you could. The commands are there. Just a matter of you going through and doing it. So what this really breaks down to is it gives you some flexibility in terms of learning that I think would be really beneficial. So we talked about this on InfoSec Pat's chat last night and then on my live. So what I really think, for those of you that are actually interested in getting started, my channel is not geared to the very, very entry level. My channel is geared more to the mid to senior level folks. You know, I'm diving into technologies, you know, fairly deep. My workbooks are not meant for the beginner. So if you're just getting started or you're transitioning from something into networking, this is hopefully going to put you on the right path and give you some insight as to what you might be trying to do. Now, I'm not going to say this, but if you would like, you can take a screenshot of my screen and you can go through. I'll even move the mouse out of the way for you. You can take a screenshot of this and then go build this out however you'd like. I encourage you to get this to work, come up with your own addressing scheme, figure out how to get PC0 to talk to server 0, and then eventually PC0 to talk to server 2, and all the good stuff that goes along with that, and see what it looks like. Because if you're doing things correctly, if you build layer 2 out and you can get layer 3 to work, then you should be in pretty good shape in order to move forward with that. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out with me. And until next time, guys, take it easy.